I trusted him. My mentor, my guide. Then he crushed my future with a single grade. My name's William. I'm 25. I'm a grad student, burning the midnight oil in a lab. I poured my soul into my research, only to have it torn apart by a professor's grudge. I learned that trust is fragile, and revenge is a quiet fire that burns brighter than failure. I was 25, a grad student with a chip on my shoulder and a fire in my gut. My lab was my world, fluorescent lights buzzing, coffee cups piling up, the hum of my laptop as I ran simulations late into the night. My research was on neural networks, a new approach to machine learning that could predict patterns most models missed. It wasn't just a project. It was my shot to prove I belonged. I'd spent 2 years scraping by on a scholarship, eating instant noodles, skipping sleep to chase a breakthrough. Every line of code felt like carving my name into the future. Dr. Hargrove was the gatekeeper. Mid-50s, sharp suit, sharper tongue. He ran the department like a king, his word law. At first, he saw something in me. "William," he'd say, leaning back in his chair, "your work's got potential. Don't screw it up." His praise hit like a drug. I'd walk out of his office, shoulders back, ready to grind another 12 hours. He'd parade me at department meetings, my graphs projected on the screen, his voice booming about our promising young scholar. I ate it up. I thought he was in my corner. Then came the disagreement. It was small at first, a footnote in a meeting. I proposed a new algorithm tweak. Nothing radical, just a different way to weight the data. I'd run tests, check the math twice. The results were solid, better than the standard model. But Hargrove's eyes narrowed when I presented it. "Unorthodox," he muttered, tapping his pen. I pushed back, calm but firm, cited my data. His jaw tightened. The room went quiet. "We'll discuss this later, William," he said, his voice like a blade. My stomach twisted, but I nodded, thinking it was just a hiccup. That night, I couldn't sleep. My apartment was a mess, books stacked on the floor, dishes in the sink. I sat at my desk, the blue glow of my screen burning my eyes. My hand shook as I typed, rechecking my work. Had I missed something? The numbers held up, but Hargrove's tone clung to me. I could still see his face, the way his lips curled when I spoke. It wasn't about the data. It was about control. I rubbed my eyes, the weight of it settling in my chest. I'd poured everything into this project. 2 years of my life, every ounce of my focus. If Hargrove turned on me, what did I have left? I told myself to stay calm. He'd come around. He had to. I was a star student, the one he bragged about. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, my breath uneven. The lab was my proving ground, and I wasn't ready to lose it. But deep down, a voice whispered, this wasn't over. Hargrove's ego was bigger than my ambition, and I just stepped on it. What would he do when he realized I wouldn't back down? I didn't know it yet, but that disagreement was the first crack. And cracks, left unchecked, bring down walls. The meeting room smelled of stale coffee and dry erase markers. I sat across from Dr. Hargrove, my laptop open, graphs glowing on the screen. My hand was steady, but my pulse wasn't. I'd spent days preparing, triple-checking my algorithm's results. The data was airtight. My tweak improved prediction accuracy by 12%. I laid it out, voice even, pointing to the numbers. This could change how we approach the model, I said, looking him in the eye. Hargrove leaned back, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Then he spoke, his voice low, dripping with disdain. "Reckless, William. You're chasing shortcuts, not solutions." I blinked, my throat tightening. Shortcuts? I'd run thousands of simulations, logged every step. I pushed back, citing the tests, my voice rising just a fraction. "The results hold up, Dr. Hargrove. I can show you the logs." His eyes flashed, and the room felt smaller. "You're out of your depth," he snapped, his pen tapping the table like a gavel. The other grad students shifted in their seats, avoiding my gaze. I swallowed hard, my palms sweating. I wanted to argue, to shove the data in his face, but his stare pinned me down. "We're done here," he said, dismissing me like a kid who'd spoken out of turn. I left the room, my chest tight, replaying his words. Reckless. Out of my depth. Each one stung. Not because they were true, but because they came from him. The man who'd called me promising, who'd clapped my shoulder in front of the department. I walked to the lab, My steps heavy, my jaw clenched. I sat at my station, staring at my code, but I couldn't focus. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, useless. I kept seeing his face, that smug curl of his lip. This wasn't about the algorithm. It was about me daring to challenge him. A week later, the email came. I was in my apartment, the radiator hissing, my phone buzzing on the table. I opened the grade portal, expecting a B, maybe a low A. Instead, there was F. My stomach dropped, a cold sweat breaking out on my neck. My midterm project, the one Hargrove had once praised, now marked as fundamentally flawed. No explanation, no feedback, just that single letter, like a slap. I read it again, my breath shallow, hoping it was a glitch. It wasn't. I slammed my phone down, the sound echoing in the quiet room. I paced, my thoughts racing. This wasn't just a grade, it was my scholarship, my funding, my future. Hargrove knew that. He'd sat in his office, typing that F, knowing it could ruin me. My hands curled into fists, nails biting into my palms. I trusted him, believed in his mentorship, and he turned on me over a disagreement. The betrayal burned, sharp and raw, like a blade twisting in my gut. I stared out the window, the campus lights blurring in the dark. He thought he could bury me with one letter. But I wasn't done. Not yet. That F wasn't just a grade. It was a declaration of war. And I was ready to fight back. The F on my transcript was a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I sat in my apartment, the air thick with the smell of burnt coffee and damp laundry. Bills were piled on the counter. Rent, utilities, a late notice for my student loan. My scholarship required a 3.5 GPA, and that single grade dragged me below the line. I could lose everything. My funding, my spot in the program, my chance at a career. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. I kept seeing Hargrove's face, that cold smirk when he dismissed me. He knew what this would do to me. He wanted it to. I tried to work, but the lab felt like a cage. My laptop screen glowed with my project, the same one Hargrove had once called promising. Now it was flawed, according to him. I scrolled through my code, my eyes burning, looking for mistakes that weren't there. My hand shook, not from fear, but from rage. I wanted to storm his office, demand answers, but I knew he'd just lean back in his chair, that pen tapping, and tell me I was overreacting. I slammed my laptop shut, the sound sharp in the quiet. My friend Jake came by that night, a beer in hand, trying to pull me out of the spiral. Just appeal the gray, man, he said, slouched on my couch. Hargrove's a jerk, but you've got the data. His voice was casual, like this was a speed bump. I stared at the floor, my fingers digging into my palms. He won't budge. I said, my voice low. This is personal. Jake shrugged, sipping his beer. Then let it go. You're better than this. Let it go. The words felt like a slap. Let go of 2 years of work, of nights without sleep, of every sacrifice I'd made. I shook my head and my chest tight. I can't, I said. He didn't get it. No one did. I stayed up after he left, the apartment dark except for the flicker of my phone. I scrolled through emails, old notes from Hargrove, praising my work. Keep this up, William, and you'll go far. Lies. My breath came short, my heart pounding like it wanted to break free. The betrayal wasn't just a grade. It was the trust I'd given him, the hours I'd spent believing he saw my worth. Now, I was just a name on a roster, one he could erase with a keystroke. I stood at my window, the city lights smearing in the rain. My reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, but something shifted inside me. This wasn't the end. Hargrove thought he'd silence me, crush me under his ego. But I wasn't the kid who'd walked into his office, eager for approval. My fists unclenched, my breathing steadied. I'd find a way to fight back, to make him pay for this. I didn't know how yet, but the fire was there, smoldering, waiting for a spark. Hargrove thought he'd buried me, but even a dead seed can break through stone. The days after the failing grade were a haze of anger and coffee. My apartment felt like a cell, the walls closing in with every unpaid bill I ignored. I couldn't face the lab, couldn't look at my code without seeing Hargrove's smug face. But late one night, scrolling through academic forums to distract myself, I stumbled across a post. A small, independent journal, Frontiers in Computational Research, was calling for submissions. No big name, no prestige, but they wanted innovative work like mine. My heart kicked up, a flicker of hope cutting through the fog. Could I do this? Submit my research without Hargrove's approval? I leaned back in my chair, my hands trembling as I opened my manuscript. The screen glowed, my algorithm laid out in clean lines of code and equations. It was good work, better than good. Hargrove's flawed label was a lie, and I knew it. But submitting it meant going behind his back, risking his wrath. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my pulse loud in my ears. I saw his face again, that condescending sneer. Reckless, he called me. I clenched my jaw, the anger surging. Reckless? I'd show him reckless. I spent nights refining the paper, my eyes burning from the screen's glare. Every sentence was a rebellion. Every edit a middle finger to Hargrove. I rewrote the abstract, sharpened the data tables, made sure every word was bulletproof. My coffee went cold, my back ached, but I didn't stop. This wasn't just about proving myself anymore. It was about taking back what he tried to steal. My future, my voice. The journal's deadline was tight, and I worked until dawn, my hand steady now, fueled by defiance. Jay caught wind of it when we grabbed lunch at the campus deli. He leaned across the table, his voice low. You're submitting without Hargrove's sign-off? Man, that's suicide. He's got connections everywhere. His eyes were wide, his sandwich untouched. I shrugged, my stomach twisting but my face calm. Let him try to stop me, I said, my voice harder than I meant. Jake shook his head, muttering about Hargrove's influence. Editors he knew, grants he controlled. He'll crush you all. I gripped my cup, the plastic creaking. He already tried, I said. Jake looked away, and I knew he thought I was doomed. Back home, I stared at the submission page, the cursor blinking over the upload button. My palms were slick, my breath uneven. This was it, no going back. If Hargrove found out, he'd make sure I paid. But I saw that F again, felt the sting of his betrayal. My finger hovered, then pressed down. The file uploaded, a confirmation email pinged. I let out a shaky breath, my heart racing. I'd just thrown a punch in the dark. Now I had to wait and see if it landed, or if Hargrove would hit back harder. I'd fire my shot. But Hargrove wasn't the type to stay quiet, and I wasn't ready for what came next. The moment I clicked upload, a rush hit me. Half thrill, half dread. My manuscript was out there, sent to frontiers in computational research, no longer just mine, but alive in the world. I leaned back in my chair, my apartment dark except for the laptop's glow. My hands trembled, not from doubt, but from the adrenaline of rebellion. I'd gone behind Hargrove's back, defied the man who thought he could bury me with a single grade. My breath came quick, my chest tight with the gamble I just made. 2 days later, an email pinged. The journal's editor, Dr. Lena Carter, wrote back. Intriguing approach, Mr. Tate. We're interested. Can you clarify your methodology? My heart leapt, a grin breaking across my face. I read it again, my fingers tapping the desk. Interested. They saw what Hargrove refused to. I typed a response, my words precise, laying out the algorithm's logic. Every keystroke felt like a step forward, away from that F, away from his control. I hit send, my pulse still racing, and for the first time in weeks, I slept without nightmares. But Hargrove had ears everywhere. I was in the lab, tweaking a simulation, when I felt the air shift. He stood in the doorway, his shadow long across the floor. William, he said, his voice low, like a storm rolling in. I turned, my stomach nodding, but I kept my face blank. I hear you've been busy, he said, stepping closer, his eyes locked on mine. Submitting papers without my approval. My mouth went dry, but I didn't flinch. It's my work, I said, my voice steady despite the sweat on my palms. His lips twitched, not quite a smile, more like a predator baring teeth. You're playing a dangerous game, son. I stood taller, my fists clenching at my sides. I'm not your son, I said, the word sharp, cutting through the silence. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought he'd snap. Instead, he turned, his footsteps echoing as he left. My knees felt weak, but I didn't sit. I faced him down, and it felt good, damn good. But I knew he wasn't done. Hargrove didn't lose gracefully, and I just painted a target on my back. That night, I sat at my desk, the confirmation email from Dr. Carter open on my screen. My hands were still, but my mind raced. I'd taken the first step, but Hargrove's threat hung heavy, like a blade waiting to drop. I stared at my code, the lines I'd fought for, and felt the fire in my gut flare brighter. He thought he could scare me into submission. He didn't know me at all. Hargrove's warning was clear, but I wasn't backing down. The real fight was just beginning. The email came on a Tuesday morning, the subject line simple: publication confirmation. Frontiers in Computational Research had accepted my paper. My algorithm, the one Hargrove called flawed, was now in print, available to anyone with a login. I sat at my kitchen table, the morning light slanting through the blinds, and read the editor's note again. Groundbreaking, Dr. Carter called it. My chest swelled, a grin tugging at my lips. I'd done it. I'd taken my work out of Hargrove's hands and into the world. My fingers tapped the table, restless with energy, as I imagined his face when he heard. Word spread fast. A colleague, Sarah, texted me a link to the journal's site, her message all caps: "Dude, this is huge." By noon, my inbox was flooded. Classmates, professors from other schools, even a researcher from a tech firm asking to collaborate. The paper was gaining traction, shared on academic forums, retweeted by data scientists I'd never met. Each notification felt like a pulse, proof that my work wasn't just alive but thriving. I leaned back, my breath steady, feeling the weight of that F lift just a little. Hargrove couldn't touch this. But he knew. I saw him in the lab that afternoon. He stood by the coffee machine, his posture stiff, his eyes avoiding mine. I kept my head down, pretending to check my simulations, but I felt his gaze burn in me later, when he thought I wasn't looking. His face was a mask, tight lips, furrowed brow, like he'd swallowed something bitter. I overheard him in the hall. His voice clipped as he spoke to another professor. William's paper? A fluke. He got lucky. My jaw clenched, but I stayed quiet, my hand steady on my keyboard. Let him talk. The world was listening to me now. By evening, the department was buzzing. A grad student showed me a post on an academic subreddit. New neural network paper out of my university. Game changer. My name was in the comments, tagged with praise. Hargrove's wasn't. I pictured him in his office, scrolling through the same thread, his ego bruised as my work outshone his. My pulse quickened, a quiet thrill running through me. This wasn't just validation. It was justice, sharp and clean. I'd taken his power to silence me and turned it against him. But Hargrove's silence worried me. He wasn't the type to let this slide. I sat in my apartment that night, the city's hum faint through the window. My phone glowed with notifications, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. His threat from the lab echoed in my head. You're playing a dangerous game. I rubbed my neck, the muscles tight, and stared at the journal's PDF open on my screen. I'd won this battle, but Hargrove wasn't done. Men like him never are. My paper was out, my name rising, but Hargrove's silence was a storm waiting to break. The fallout came faster than I expected. My paper wasn't just a hit, it was a bomb. Frontiers in Computational Research featured it in their newsletter, and universities from Boston to Berkeley were citing it. My inbox overflowed with emails, invitations to speak, offers from rival labs, even a query from a startup wanting to license my algorithm. I sat in my apartment, the glow of my laptop lighting my face, and felt my pulse steady. Each message was a brick in the wall I was building, one Hargrove couldn't tear down. But the real victory was in the whispers spreading through the department. I overheard them in the lab, grad students huddled over coffee. Hargrove tanked William's grade, but the paper's legit. One said, voice low. Makes you wonder what else he's pulled. Another professor, Dr. Lin, pulled me aside after a seminar. Your work's causing a stir, William, she said, her eyes sharp. Some people aren't happy. She didn't name Hargrove, but she didn't have to. His name was losing its weight, his authority fraying like a cheap suit. I nodded, my jaw tight, hiding the spark in my chest. His empire was crumbling, and I'd lit the match. The conference was where it all came to a head. It was a national event, packed with researchers and industry types, the air thick with ambition and cologne. I was presenting my paper, my first big stage. My hands sweated as I adjusted the mic, but my voice didn't waver. I walked through my algorithm, slide by slide, the room quiet except for the hum of the projector. Questions came, tough ones, but I answered with data, not bravado. The applause was loud, real. I caught Hargrove's face in the crowd, his lips a thin line, his eyes like knives. Afterward, he cornered me by the coffee station, his voice a low hiss. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he said, his breath hot with rage. I met his gaze, my heart pounding, but my stance firm. "I trusted you," I said, my voice steady, loud enough for others to hear. "You failed me over a disagreement, tried to bury my work. But it's out there now." Heads turned, conversations paused. His face reddened, his hands twitching like he wanted to grab me. "You'll regret this," he muttered, but his voice cracked. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on his. "No, Dr. Hargrove. You will." By the next week, the department was a different place. Hargrove's name came up less in meetings. His grants were under scrutiny. A colleague told me he'd lost a key funding proposal, his reputation bruised by questions about his judgment. I walked into the lab, my shoulders squared, my inbox full of opportunities. Hargrove's office door stayed, closed more often now. I'd taken his power, turned his own game against him. The victory was cold, sharp, like a blade I'd forged myself. But I knew it wasn't over, not completely. I brought him low, but Hargrove's kind don't stay down. What'd he do next? The dust settled, but the air still felt heavy. Hargrove's office door stayed shut most days, his name a whisper in the department, no longer a command. My paper had done more than outshine him. It had exposed him. Colleagues questioned his grading, his fairness, his grip on the program. A department review was rumored, his funding drying up like a river in drought. I walked through the lab, my steps lighter, my inbox brimming with offers. A guest lecture at MIT, a fellowship in California, a startup wanting me as a consultant. My scholarship was safe, my future wide open. I'd won. But victory didn't erase the ache. I sat in my apartment, the city's hum faint through the window, and stared at the journal's PDF on my screen. The words were mine, but they felt like they belonged to someone else. Someone who hadn't trusted Hargrove, hadn't felt the sting of that F. My hands rested on the desk, steady now, but I could still feel the tremor from those nights of doubt, the weight of bills piling up, the burn of his betrayal. I rubbed my eyes, my breath slow, and realized this wasn't just about winning. It was about what I'd become. I thought back to that first meeting, when Hargrove's praise had lit a spark in me. I was eager then, hungry for approval, blind to his ego. Now, I saw the world clearer. Trust wasn't a gift to give lightly. It was a blade that could cut both ways. I'd learned to wield it, to fight for what was mine. My jaw tightened as I remembered his voice, that smug, reckless, cutting me down. I turned his weapon against him, not with fists or shouts, but with my work, my truth. The thought brought a quiet smile, cold but real. Jake stopped by one night, a six-pack in hand, his grin wide. "You're a legend, man," he said, clinking his bottle against mine. "Hargrove's done." I nodded, sipping my beer, but my mind was elsewhere. I wasn't celebrating. I was reflecting. The fire that drove me to publish, to face him at that conference, wasn't gone. It had settled deep, a steady burn that kept me sharp. I wasn't the kid who'd walked into the lab 2 years ago, eyes wide, ready to please. I was someone new, forged in the heat of betrayal, tempered by my own defiance. I stood at my window, the city lights stretching out below. My reflection stared back, older somehow, harder. Hargrove's fall was justice, but it wasn't the end. The world was bigger than his office, bigger than one grade. I'd keep pushing, keep building, not for him or anyone else, but for me. The fire was mine now, and it would carry me forward. I'd burned one bridge to build another. But what fires waited in the world beyond?